From there we have what's called the SeedMaster touchscreen. We had a few people put their hands up saying that they've seen this control box. It's got a few different functions to it as well. Originally what it was created for is mostly auto adjust packing force sensor. And from there we utilized it to also be able to operate zone command. And basically it only operated through 2011 that it actually operated the actual zones. And when we talk about zone command now, we list it as a full auto. In the original ones, it was manual, so it was actually each zone was labeled on here, and it's actually each switch then manually engaged and disengaged. So in 2011, that was also the partner portion of this control box. So from there, the actual base operation of it, if you look up on the screen here, the main work screen is then lit up green. So A is listing off the actual main work screen. And when that tab is pressed, it lights green, and it lets you know that that's the main working page that you're working in. So B is then the auto adjust packing force sensor auto or manual switch. So if you look here, it labels it off as auto. So that's also a touchscreen switch there that can be touched, and then it would switch it to manual. So if we had manual, it would be manually operating, and you would manually increase and decrease your actual pressure. And when you have it in auto, it goes into a packing force sensor mode, which then it's automatically wanting to adjust the hydraulic pressure to maintain the exact same packing pressure throughout the field. C is the increase decrease, which is the packing force sensor increase or decrease switch. So simply, again, like the other control box, increase by arrowing up, decrease by arrowing down. D is the actual opener down pressure valve setting. So when we get into the touchscreen control box, it operates slightly different than the original one. The original one operated with a DC motor turning a relief valve back and forth, and I'll show you that when we get into the hydraulics later in the morning here. And with the SeedMaster touchscreen, we're actually operating with a PWM valve. So what this number actually means, where you read valve setting 45, what that is actually 45% closed. So that does have a reference point on the actual SeedMaster touchscreen. As the valve closes, it increases the pressure. So kind of get that in mind of how it operates. E is the actual packing force. So when you're in the auto mode, when that's listed off as auto, it will then give you packing force in the middle, which is reading the actual packing pressure. So E is actual packing pressure. So it's an independent number just to give you a readout of what the valve is doing first that we just described, but also second to know what the actual packing is on the actual packer wheel, to actually read it in relativity to what the set point is. So F is then the actual set point for the auto adjust packing force sensor. So the set point is what you would actually change when you're setting up in the field. So in the auto mode, you would adjust your set point to whatever you want to see for packing pressure. So, and that's actual seed bed packing. So on this one, it's been increased, the set point's been changed and increased with the arrows here to be increased up to 250 pounds. So that's actual pounds of seed bed pack. And at that point, when we turn on our opener pressure, which is G, here, it will actually change the valve setting, closing that valve setting or giving you a higher percent that it's closed, to give you a readout that the actual packing pressure is coming up, and it's going to always aim for what's called the set point. So when you set the set point, everything is always striving to maintain that when you're in auto mode. So those operations are started, again, the same as the other control box, with the actual opener pressure on-off switch. So in this control box, it actually lists it on the touchscreen. Now, one other thing we have is up on the top left there, an OP switch. So that OP switch is a hard key, so you can actually press it, and at that point there's a little green light that'll light up, as well as it'll have a little audible alarm that'll beep back saying that you actually did press it. When you actually press just on the touchscreen, it simply lights up the screen green around the actual switch that you've touched. So they actually operate the same function, but they don't light up the same. So when you touch the touchscreen, it lights green. When you touch the hard key, it simply lights a little light and beeps at you. So when we're operating these control boxes, I highly encourage everyone to teach customers, even if you pull in a used one or you're hooking one up, to operate with the actual hard key. It's something that is a for sure thing. When you push it underneath, it's like using a manual toggle switch or things like that. You know, it's something that gives you a for sure when you're actually operating that control. So know that you have both, but I do highly recommend operating with the actual OP switch or the opener pressure switch. So from there, we have one more thing that's listed off, and that's quick dump. So H is right there. Quick dump is a way that if we have everything operating in the field, seeds running, everything else is operating, and we want to relieve the hydraulic pressure off of the actual openers, we can then touch and press that actual quick dump. So when you touch it, it'll actually relieve the actual hydraulic oil pressure by reducing the valve setting. So you'll see that it'll fully open that valve up, and it'll be full open, so that'll drop back. And what it's actually doing at that point, it's relieving the actual hydraulic pressure off the openers to reduce draft, so that you can continue seeding through a wet spot. So it was an option that was put in place to be able to seed through wet conditions that you can get the machine to actually comb through, but you can't have all the necessary opener pressure that you would typically operate when in the seeding mode. One other thing we put in place was a hard key for it as well when we put the hard keys on it. So the hard keys was an update that we did, and the override is that quick dump. So when you press that quick dump, it will actually light up green that it's active, and that it's relieving the actual pressure off. So